And you're going to have commodity inflation rising. You're going to have commodity inflation as you start the process of getting towards a demand pull environment. And you're going to have credit asset either stagnation or collapse or not collapse, but
Lowering.
contraction,
Yeah.
contraction. Or if you're doing if you're going to do what I think Trump is trying to do, which is just basically freeze housing prices where they are and change the underlying Main Street economy to be able to support that for the younger generations, which is what I think he's trying to do. And I think that's what he and Besant are trying to do. And Powell's job is to be the bad guy in all of this because Trump needs a villain.
Yeah. So he's the fall guy.
He's the scapegoat.
Yeah. So I'm going to tie all this into, again, this, I'm just going back to other conversations we had, and you mentioned on this show, on my show, about money flow coming back to the US. This was about, I don't want to say 9 months ago.
Right.
And that's what's happening. And I was surprised at the time. And you've changed my opinion. You changed my opinion pretty quickly. I was like, I bet he's right. Money's going to flow. And that's what you're saying. Now, it's a very interesting position because you have money flow coming back to the US, higher interest rates, but the Fed, I mean, they're going to lower, right?
At some point, yeah. They may even lower next week.
Right. I think they will, but they can. Right?
Yeah. Well, that's what everybody keeps saying. They can't, but they can. Here's the thing.
That's exactly it. Exactly. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to say is following, and let's start with the first thing I'm going to say, which is, has anybody noticed that Jerome Powell is not hand-holding the markets anymore? Now, he did a lot of hand-holding for a long, long time. Now, the way I described it to my patrons, literally this morning for the Wednesday market report, was price discovery is coming back into the markets. It's going to be slow and painful. It's happening across all the domains, not just financial markets, not just commodity markets, not just, rent and all that. No, it's also happening in the political markets, in the geopolitical markets, in the information space. It's happening everywhere. We're beginning to find out who's been full of shit and who hasn't been. And what does it actually cost to run a propaganda campaign against the president? What's it like to how much is it really going to cost Iran to run a propaganda campaign about how powerful their missile systems are, or Israel conversely effective Israel's Iron Dome system is, or. All of this stuff is now being found. We're going to find out about. We're beginning to find out who's been lying, who hasn't been. What we're really finding out is that everybody's been lying just a little bit because that's to their strategic advantage. But
right.
Some people are lying more than others, and that's the problem. And that's the problem we're having resolving. I'm getting my point. I'm going to get back to the point about Powell here in a second, but just understand across all these domains that we're seeing this, right? And it's affected our political conversations. You have high profile people who should know better falling for this shit left, right, and center. People like Tucker Carlson, right? You have other people who have wormed their way into becoming a trusted voice in the scenario in say geopolitics, for example, who over the last 3 years have become vectors for bad information because they don't have the ability to really figure out when they're being lied to by intelligence agencies. And I'm not just saying they're inherently distrustful, for example, of anything we say, but they take everything the Russians say at face value. Like, really? You don't think Russians lie? Sorry. I mean, I have a soft spot for the Russians. I love what they've done. They're farther along the process of extricating themselves from this globalist, Minority Report with more Germans bullshit that we're seeing coming out of the European Union. But at the same time, it's not like they haven't been lying to us about stuff. Like, come on. So the truth, as always, lies somewhere in the middle between their propaganda, our willingness, and then us in the middle being willing to believe whatever narrative suits our personal psychological makeup at the time. And a lot of Americans who have become staunch critics of America for good reason, because we've become something that we're not happy with, made us really susceptible. I think all of us, including myself, for a long period of time. I'm not sitting here in a glass house, not throwing stones here. Like, seriously, we all do this, and we're all susceptible to someone else's propaganda. And so those lies are all coming down, and we're getting real. I mean, I don't know about you, but I was just as surprised as anybody else at the 12-day war. I really thought Iran had more come, and they did. And a lot of people are having a hard time reconciling with that. And as the last aside before I get back to Powell, notice how both sides are trying to gin up the conflict again.
Yeah.
Whose MO is that? Whose MO is that? The
Right.
same MO as the people that are attacking are happily piling onto Trump's criticisms of Jerome Powell. How about Monday? I'll give you a perfect example. How about Monday? I walk away from my Twitter feed for like 5 hours after markets close on Monday, because I'm like, dude, Mr. Pandoria Classic is dropping. I'm playing WoW tonight. I don't want to deal with this bullshit. And I come back and I wake up the next morning and everybody's talking about, Powell's going to have a speech this morning at 8:30. He's going to resign. I'm like, where the fuck did that come from?
Right.
And I'm like, well, he never does things like that. Bassett was there yesterday. And everybody was like, really? You think Jerome Powell is going to fold that easily to Orange Jesus? And if he does, you don't think that that's not all part of the goddamn kayfabe anyway?
Yeah.
And what does he do? He goes out and he gives a speech, talking about how we have to reform things. And, everybody's like, we got Anna Paulina stripper referring him to criminal referral to the DOJ over, a 31% cost overrun on the Fed remodeling. I'm like, really? Only 31%? I'm like, that by government standards, a 31% cost overrun is coming in under budget.
Yeah. Right.
For fuck's sake. Like, really? So that one doesn't have, so she's just, AOC with better curves and, and a concealed carry permit being run by somebody who, for her own purposes, by somebody who's trying to pile on. I wonder who the hell she works for, or is being fed bad information. Like, it's dumb. The point of all of this is to play this up. Again, all roads lead to London, folks, because they're the ones who are in the most vulnerable position here.
Yes.
Period. Okay. Around everything that's happening. So that's what's happening so Powell being set up as the bad guy. Now to the original question about strategic ambiguity. The last point, and then I'll turn the microphone back over. Which is, because I need to actually answer the question you were getting at. But
go ahead.
So, which is, like I said, does anybody notice Jerome Powell is now actually not spoon feeding the markets anymore? The bond markets, as of this morning, are bored. Yeah, Powell's not going to cut rates. 3 weeks ago, at the beginning of the month, I was told Chris Marcus, I'm like, I could see Powell cutting 50 basis points just to make Trump happy. Mm-hmm. That was then. Then we got a trade deal with Japan. Then we got a trade deal with Indonesia, then Vietnam, and we got the big ones: Indonesia, Vietnam, Japan. These are big ones. These are important ones because they're also the way that Chinese goods get rebranded. They go through Indonesia, they go through Vietnam, they go through Malaysia, they go through Laos, and all these other countries. But he gets all that done. More data comes out, but the data is the data is non-committal. Like, the CPI data is not great. The core PCI, the PC deflator data is not all that interesting. The labor market data is decent, right? I mean, decent. The housing market data is not great. Yeah, the big home builders got crushed last quarter. Yeah, they're down 24%. Yeah, year over year. Yeah, what a shock. You guys built shitty houses for too much money.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to say it. Bill Pulte and D.R. Horton and Lennar and all that, they built crappy houses, built crappy cookie cutter houses for too much money, and they can't get that money anymore. So, yeah, they've got a problem. You bet on something that wasn't going to happen. And, you bet on 7 interest rate cuts last year. You only got 4, and now you're in trouble. And now you're screaming.
Yeah.
Pulte over at FH, over FHFA is he's got a job to do, and I know what that job is, and I'm not worried about him running his mouth in public because he only does what he's told to do. But that's my take on the subject. I may be wrong, but Powell could cut 25 basis points here and surprise the shit out of the market, and just shock everybody out of their complacency. They go, you know what? Nah, yeah, we can cut 25 basis points. I can make Trump happy. I can back some pressure off the Fed, whatever, and I can throw 25 basis points into the hopper and watch everybody lose their minds. Dow's kicking up towards 45 grand, trying to break out to an all-time high. The German DAX is struggling to break to new all-time highs, which makes sense because where else was anybody going to put the money when they're doing massive amounts of financial repression in the bond market in Europe? But the French markets are rolling over. The Italian markets are on fire, by the way. I don't know if anybody's noticed.
Yeah, I have.